Well, hi there. My name's Pop, and I'd like to tell you a story. A story about a little red hen. Now, this story's been around for a long, long time, and a lot of storytellers have told it. Today, I want to tell you my version, not because my version is better than the other versions, but because it's different from the other versions. I really like this story, and I hope you will too. Once upon a time, a long time ago, but not very far from here, there was a little red hen. And one day she was pecking across the barnyard, gathering food, and she found several grains of wheat. And she thought to herself, with a little help from my friends, we could plant these grains and grow enough wheat that I could make bread for everybody in the farmyard. And so she gathered up the wheat and she went and stood in the middle of the barnyard and she said in her very loudest voice, "Who will help me plant this grain so that we can all have bread?" And she waited and she waited and nobody said anything. So she went to her friend Kitty the cat and asked Kitty to help. Now she had to wake Kitty up because Kitty was taking a nap. And when she explained what she wanted, Kitty looked at the little red hen and said, "That is a perfectly terrible idea. I need my beauty rest. And besides that, I'm a charmer, not a farmer. You can just count me out." And so she rolled over and went back to sleep. And the little red hen said, "Well, okay, I guess I'll have to do this part by myself." And that's exactly what she did. She all alone planted those grains of wheat and covered them all up. And then she realized that in order for the wheat to grow, it needed to be watered. And so she went back into the middle of the barnyard and said in her very loudest voice, "Who will help me water this wheat so that we can all have bread?" And she waited and she waited and nobody said anything. So she went to her friend Ducky Lucky and she told Ducky what she was doing and asked for help. And Ducky looked at her and said, "Have you quacked up? I'd rather swim nonstop than water a crop." And that's exactly what he did. He paddled off. And so the little red hen said, "Well, I guess I'll have to do this part by myself too." And that's exactly what she did. She watered that wheat and watered that wheat and watered that wheat until she had a huge crop of wheat. And she realized that now she had to harvest it so it could be taken to the mill and turned into flour. And so she went back into the middle of the barnyard and she said in her very loudest voice, "Who will help me harvest this wheat so that we can all have bread?" And she waited and she waited and she waited and nothing happened. Nobody said anything. So she went to her friend Connie the cow to ask for help. And Connie said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not in the mood. And I'd rather get out of this heat than harvest any wheat." And she then ambled off to the nearest tree and lay down in the shade. And the little red hen said, "Well, all right, I guess I'll have to do this part by myself too." And that's exactly what she did. She cut down all that wheat and had it all ready to take to the mill, all by herself. It took her a long time. And then she realized that there was a lot of wheat to get to the mill and she probably needed some help. So she went back to the barnyard and in her very loudest voice said, "Who will help me take this wheat to the mill so that we can all have bread?" And she waited and she waited and she waited and nobody said anything. So she went to her friend Horace the horse and asked Horace if he would help. And Horace looked at her and said, "Nay, nay, nay, because that's what horses say. But in this case, it also meant, no, I won't. And he made sure she understood that by saying, I'd rather run up that hill than go to any mill. And that's exactly what he did. He galloped away. So the little red hen said, well, I guess I'll have to do this part by myself too. And that's exactly what she did. It took her several trips, but she got all that wheat up to the mill, waited for it to be ground into flour, and got the flour sacks back all by herself. And now she was ready to make the bread. So she said in her very loudest voice, who will help me make the dough so that we can all have bread? And she waited, and she waited, and she waited, and nobody said anything. So she went to her friend Sammy the sheep and told Sammy what she needed. And Sammy said, that is a really bad idea. I'd rather run to and fro than make any dough. And he frolicked off. So the little red hen said, well, okay, I guess I'll have to do this part by myself too. And that's exactly what she did. All alone, she made loaf after loaf of dough and put it in the oven. And pretty soon the entire barnyard was filled with delightful aroma of baking bread. And that smell was just like a magnet. Kitty the cat woke up from her nap and meandered over. And Ducky Lucky came out of the pond and waddled over. And Connie the cow got up and the guy came out of the shade and ambled over. And Horace the horse came galloping over. And Sammy the sheep, he came galloping over. And they gathered all around her. And as she took that bread out of the oven, they said, wow, look at our bread. When can we eat? And the little red hen looked at them and said, you know, I wanted this to be our bread. And I kept asking everyone for help, but nobody helped me. And so I've got a lot of bread here, but I think I'm going to do this all by myself too. And that's exactly what she did. She sat there and ate every bit of that bread. And it was delicious. And I'll bet you this. I'll bet you that the next time the little red hen asks for help, she'll get it. And I hope that the next time a friend of yours asks you for help, you'll give it to them.